Okay, we're holding on Samach Beis and Aleph Tani Reb Zakkai Kamid Reb Yochanan. Okay, Bezos Hashem also tonight. We'll try to do another class so we can get a little bit closer to where we're. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. So we're learning Shabbat Beis Hamikdash immediately. Mashiach, and we're learning Lili Nishmas, the Sanos Ben B'Tzion. And Refuah Shleima for everyone that needs a Refuah Shleima in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so the Gemara starts off like this. We're talking about Avodah Zarah here. That's like the topic. And let's see. Tani Reb Zakkai. Reb Zakkai taught the following statement: Kamei de Reb Yochanan in front of Reb Yochanan. Zivach v'kiter v'nisach v'ishtachva b'helam echad. He does. He serves an idol in multiple ways, but it's all in one forgetting. And he does it because of a it's all a mistake. He doesn't know either that it's prohibited, or he doesn't know that these actions are prohibited. The question is he going to have to bring a sacrifice for each one of these types of services, because he slaughtered, because he sprinkled, because he brought the incense, because he poured, or does he have to bring only one? It's all in one forgetting. You know, like on Shabbos, if someone forgets that it's Shabbos, and he does multiple malachas. He plows the field, and then he plants, and then he harvests, and then he does. So he's going to have to bring for each av malacha. He's going to have to bring another sacrifice, right? He does the same malacha, same av malacha, it's only going to be one, right? Something like that. Now, there's a difference between if he forgets it's Shabbos or if he forgets if the malacha is asur. There may be some differences we'll see in the Gemara here. Well, what happens by Avodah Zarah? So, and he bows down, that's one of them. So all this behelam bechan. So Reb Zakkai said, Eina chai v'lachas. All of these malachas, all of these avodas of Avodah Zarah, he's only going to have to bring one sacrifice. Amar le'ei, so Rabbi Yochanan tells to Reb Zakkai, Buktani lebra. He says, go and teach that outside. That means you're mistaken. That's not accurate. Well, Amar Reb Abba pipes up, student of Rabbi Yochanan. He says, Hadam Reb Zakkai machlekes Rabbi Yosef Reb Nasan. There's a support for that. It's actually a machlekes. It's not totally mistaken. There's an opinion that this could follow. What's the machlekes? Well, it's machlekes Rabbi Yossi and Reb Nasan. The Tanya was started in a brayso. Havara lalav yatsa divrei Rabbi Yossi. Reb Nasan ay melachalak yatsa. When it says in the Torah, it also says that you shall not do any work on Shabbos. There's another verse that says, shall not light a fire. He already said you can't do any work. Now, when it says you can't do any work on Shabbos, that's including 39 malachas. Fire is in there, number 33 or whatever. I don't know. It's in there, so it's one of them. So why does it have to specify? Don't do number 30 something of the malachas. It says don't do all the malachas. Don't do any other 39. So there's a machlekes Rabbi Yossi and Reb Nasan. Rabbi Yossi says that it's coming to tell me that all the other malachas are more strict. There's a death penalty, there's kares, and etc. However, when it comes to lighting a fire, we minimize the punishments, and it's only a negative prohibition, which would be a malchus. So in other words, they all have a different. This is a unique law, specifically for lighting a fire.
If something is mentioned and then like a group is mentioned next to it, it usually isn't a single item of non-Torah.
To make it stricter, yeah, but this is so strict. This is singled out to make it more lenient, and that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Reb Nasan says l'chalak yatz. Reb Nasan holds that really we could have thought that violating Shabbos would mean that you have to violate all 39 malachas in order to violate Shabbos. It's not. or this, or this, or this. It's and this, and this, and this. You have to do 39 different types of work to actually get the full prohibition. So comes along the prohibition of lighting a fire, and that tells me that, look, even one item of the 39 is already considered a prohibition. For example, lighting a fire. Now we have a rule that anything that used to be part of the general rule but left the general rule to teach us something, it's not coming to teach us just about itself, it's coming to teach us about the entire rule, right? That's one of the 13. If that's the case, let's do this. If that's the case, then what we have here is that it's coming to tell me lachalik. It's coming to divide it up. That every individual one of the 39 malachas is each one of them is going to be its own punishment. Not that you have to do all 39. It's not like this composite of all. It's each individual one. Well, that's the case. So I have by havara machlekes, by lighting a fire, I have machlekes. What that's coming to teach us? Is it coming to teach us a leniency in lighting a fire in Shabbos, or is it coming to teach me that every single malacha is separate? And we'll say the same thing about avodah zarah. We have like this. Let's go. It's take it a drop further. Lamanda mar havara lalav yatsa. According to the opinion that says, which was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, that when it comes to lighting a fire, why does it specify you shall not make a fire on Shabbos? That's coming to tell me that the prohibition of making a fire is less strict. So then we could say, see, by avodah zarah, it says several times, you shall not bow down. You shall not bow down to them, right? You shall not make them in this, don't serve them, don't bow down to them. It specifies not to bow down. Why does it have to specify not to bow down? You can't do any service to it. So what is this specification coming to teach me? So we're going to compare it to what not to make a fire on Shabbos. It's going to teach me. It says you're not allowed to do work, but it specifies not to make the fire. So let's compare. Rabbi Yossi would say that not to bow down is coming to tell me that there's a different prohibition there's a more lenient prohibition for bowing down than to offer incense and all of that. And Reb Nassan would say that it's coming to tell me that every malacha is done separately. Is a separate prohibition. So what would come out is Reb Zakkai that said that if you do all of these malachas, all of these services of avodah zarah, you only have one punishment, one sacrifice. That would fit perfectly with Rabbi Yossi. That he says that why does it say shtachava? Is not to divide it up, just to give me a negative prohibition. But according to Reb Nassan, that would fit with Rabbi Yochanan, that says that the shtachava is coming to divide it up, that everyone is a separate prohibition.
Bowing down seems like the worst, because that's what we always do.
No, but it's not the same sort of. It's not the same sort of action. You're not using an item. It's just moving your body. It's less of an action. There's reason. We'll see in the later. Reason to say that it's not as significant. Yeah, but that's because it's always at hand. But the real worship was to offer sacrifices and to do that. Okay.
Is there a particular connection or reason one would think that you should learn about avodah zarah from Shabbos? Or is it just the methodology?
I think right here it looks like it's just the methodology. So the Gemara says like this: according to the opinion that says, which is Reb Nassan, that says that havara, making a fire, is dividing up all the rules of Shabbos, all the 39 laws, that every individual one will incur a punishment. So shtachva nami l'chalak yatsa, which is not like Reb Zakkai. Reb Zakkai would say that you only have one prohibition. Here you're saying that we have multiple. Okay, maskef la Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, he's asking a question on Rabava. He says, how do you know that Rabbi Yosef would really agree to you to divide up the laws of Avodah Zarah the way we did for Shabbos. Maybe it's different. Maybe over there, why did Rabbi Yossi take the liberty to say that don't make a fire on Shabbos is coming to tell me a leniency? The answer is, he says, the nafkale chilak malachas me'achas meina, because he has a different source to tell me that every malacha on Shabbos is going to be a separate prohibition. So since he already has a separate source that why all 39 malachas are going to be individual prohibitions, so therefore when we have do not make a fire, it's coming to teach me a leniency in making a fire. All the other ones are kares and death penalty. Making a fire on Shabbos is only a negative prohibition. Okay, so the Tanya. But what he wants to bring out from this is that since by Avodah Zarah I don't have that source to divide up every type of service of Avodah Zarah into a separate prohibition, then even Rabbi Yossi would agree that when it says you shall not bow down, it's coming to divide it up, which loses the support for Rab Zakkai. Yeah, Rab Abba tried to bring a support for Rab Zakkai that there's really a machlekes tanoim, and comes on Rabbi Yosef and says, how do you know that Rabbi Yosef could even be a support for Rab Zakkai? Maybe it's only by Shabbos. He says, he learns it from Achas Mehena. Now, the verse Achas Mehena means one from them. It actually says from one from them. Achas means one, Hena means them, or those. Now, Hani in Aramaic is these, right? So Hena means these or those. So, Meyachas means from one, and Mehena means those, from those. Let's say those are these. Them, from them. Them is okay. Honey is these. All right. Well, this is a verse that's said by bringing a sacrifice, a sin offering, for someone that does a sin that's normally kares. If he does it by mistake, it's going to be a carbon chatas. And it says if he does from one of these, and the Gemara learns from that. The Tanya, started in a brayso, Rabbi Yossi Aimer. Rabbi Yossi explains. Don't confuse Rabbi Yossi. This Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Actually, maybe that's what we're doing. Maybe we're quoting Rabbi Yossi's opinion because Rabbi Yossi has this also. Maybe it says va'asa me'achas mehena. He does from one of these, and then he's going to have to bring the sacrifice. Hamem shechayev achas al kulan. The Gemara learns that those words are extra, so it's coming to tell me that sometimes he does a multiple sins and he only brings one sin offering. Sometimes he does multiple sins and he has to bring multiple sin offerings. How does it work? Rabbi Yonasan explains. My time with Rabbi Yossi, what's the reason for Rabbi Yossi? The verse says, he does from one from these. Achas me'achas. It's one from one. Hena. In other words, each word here is there's extra letters. Could have said Hena, and it says Mehena, from them, from them. Achashi Hena. It's coming to teach me that one, which is a multiple, which is them, one which is them. Vehena shi achas, and then there's a them, which is one. How does this work? We're talking about which sin is going to be multiple sins, and which one's going to be just one sacrifice. Achas, if someone does one sin, that would be, for example, he wrote the name Shimon on Shabbos. Shimon, you're not allowed to write on Shabbos. And here he wrote a word, he wrote a name. Me'achas, from one. That means it's not the complete one, it's only from the complete malacha. He wrote shame, Shimon. He wrote half the name Shimon. He only wrote the word shame. Shimon, he wrote Shim, Shimon. Now, it's still considered a sin, even though it's only from the complete sin. It's only part. Why? Because that word, that name, Shimon, when you write part of it, it's also considered a word, because shame means a name. It also has a meaning. It's a word with a meaning. Rashi points out that if he would have written from the name Naphtali, he would have written two letters. That wouldn't have meant anything. Naf wouldn't have meant anything. It would be insignificant. But here it's shame, Mishimon, it's actually something significant. It's considered a full word. Yeah. Hena. What does Hena means? Them. That would be referring to the Avis, to the 39 father categories of Malacha. Mehena. Mehena means from them. That means it's not the original. That's it's similar to the original. That's told us. That's telling us to bring sin offerings if a person does the offshoots of the Malacha. No, don't mean rabbinic. We're talking about biblical, but it's still a told. It's not the father category. Achas. Now we go back. We say achas shihena, one which is a multiple. That would be Zadin Shabbos v'shigas malachas. Someone knows that it's Shabbos, but he's mistaken about all the malachas. He didn't know that you're not allowed to plant. He didn't know you're not allowed to, to plow, to harvest. He didn't know that you can't do those things. He thought you can knead the dough. And so therefore, what's going to be is he's going to have to bring multiple, even though it was yeah, so then the example for this would be he knows that it's Shabbos, but he didn't know that these malachas were aser. So he's going to be chayav on each one of them. There's many shagagas. Okay.
Is this the same opinion that when part of idolatry, like it's with one, they did all the different acts, but it's still kind of as one? Like, is this more extreme?
No. No, what we're trying to do over here is we're trying to say that Rabbi Yossi, that he's the one that says that on Shabbos, when it says you shall not make a fire, it's coming to tell me a negative prohibition. It's only because he has a separate independent source how to divide up the 39 malachas. So that's why he only takes the liberty of doing that for you shall not make a fire on Shabbos. When it comes to you shall not bow down to an idol, he's not going to be able to take that liberty because he doesn't have a source to divide up all the different services of that. So when it says you shall not bow down to an idol, that's coming to divide up all the different services. So in other words, it's a proof against Reb Zakkai. That's what the Gemara is attempting to do here. Heina shiachas, what would be multiple, which turns out to be only one prohibition, only one, one prohibition, one punishment, one sacrifice. That's Shigiga Shabbos v'zadim malachas. That's if he forgets it's Shabbos, but he does multiple malachas. It's interesting that it depends what he's forgetting. If he's forgetting Shabbos and he does many malachas, it's all goes under one category of one forgetting. He only has to do one chatas. Aval hacha. Now we conclude with Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef, there's an Amira, is asking a question on the way Rabbi Abba understood Rabbi Yossi. But over here, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, we don't have a separate independent source to tell me to divide up the malachas, not malachas, to divide up the avodah, the services of worshiping, the worships of worshiping idols. Then the Kuli Almish, so then everyone probably agrees, including Rabbi Yossi, that when it says you shall not bow down, it's coming to divide all of the laws of worshiping idols, that every individual one would incur its individual punishment. Interesting. Okay, that's the question on Rabab. It's a nice long question, but that's the question. So v'chilak malachas. Now the Gemara continues to ask a question. Usually when this is the Gemara is a little bit the way Rashi is learning it. We get another question here on Rababa that was attempting to support Reb Zakkai. V'chilak malachas david kechavanami typically miachas mihena. We could also learn. You were trying to support Reb Zakkai by telling me that Rabbi Yossi is the one that would say that we don't have a source to divide up the malachas, because he uses it to tell me that it's only a negative prohibition when it comes to Shabbos. So that would be a support when it comes to idolatry, that that it's just telling me a different prohibition, but not to divide it up into separate individual punishments. However, Rabbi Yossi himself, or let's ignore Rabbi Yossi right now, but there is a source to divide up malachas on Shabbos from achas mihena. Let's use achas mihena as a source to divide up the worship types of worship of idolatry, and we'll go like this. We'll say like this. Typically, achas zvicha, achas siman echad. Achas would mean if you do a full slaughtering, and meyachas from one would mean if you only slaughtered one part of the one of the two pipes, the trachea and the esophagus, whatever. So you know, only slaughtered one. And Heno, which would mean them, which would mean obvious, which means the main laws, which is Yivuach, Kita, Nisach, Shtachava, those things that are brought as sacrifices in the temple, and now you bringing it to an idol. That would be the father laws of the worship. And Mehena, from them, what would be similar to that, was told us would be offshoots of those laws. Shavar Makalafanai broke a stick in front of it, which apparently was some other service. He does some other service, which is for worship in front of an idol. Now, what would be achas shehena? What would be, in other words, now we're using the verse that divided up the laws of Shabbos, not to divide up the laws of Avodah Zarah. What would be one which would incur multiple punishments? That would be zadan avodas kam. That's if you knew that it was idolatry. However, shegas avodas, but you didn't know that each of these services was prohibited. So you'd end up bringing multiple sacrifices because there was something missing in his awareness. Heina shiachas, and multiple services which would turn into one. Shegas avodas kacham zadan avodas. You knew that you're not allowed to worship an idol with this and this and this and that, but you didn't know that this was an idol. The Gemara says, 1 second. What do you mean you didn't know this was an idol? How do you have a mistake about the general concept of idolatry? What happened? If he thought that this was a shul and he bowed down, it turns out that behind the curtain of there was not a Sefer Torah. I don't know. So it's 1 second. But his intention was for heaven. That's not a problem. It's a problem, but it's not considered a sin. There would be no punishment there. Ella the Chazan dies to Vesagli. He must have seen some sort of statue when he bowed down to it. If he accepted it as a god, it's amazing. Then that's a regular. That's not a shoygig. That's not something that he didn't know. He did it on purpose. Ella Kibla. Rather, he didn't accept it as a god. He bowed down probably because respect or something, not because it was a god, as a greeting. It says like klamu, then that's nothing. It must be that he bowed down as a type of worship, but he did it because he thought that it would be okay, because he wasn't doing it because he believed in it. He did it because his friends want him to do it. Or he did it out of love for someone, or he did it out of fear. If he doesn't do it, he's going to be in trouble. We had a machlekes yesterday. By in Rava, if someone bows down out of love or out of fear, is he chayav or not? So Abaya says chayav. Okay, so he's going to have to bring one sacrifice. But according to Rava, that says that if he thinks that this is acceptable because it's out of love or fear, so when would we have a shigagas avodas kechav? When would you have a mistaken about the general concept of idolatry? Must be Elabaimer Mutter. It must be that he thinks that in general the concept of idolatry is permissible. A new law, Aimer Mutter. This is 1 second. Now, Aimer Mutter, the Gemara says that's the case, and we had a question regarding this. It says Tifshet Boimene Ravamir of Nachman. There was a question in Masechta Shabbos in this complexity about what he forgot when he did the malacha. We're talking about a malacha b'shagig. He worked on Shabbos. What did he forget? Did he forget the malacha? Did he forget that was prohibited? Or did he forget that it was Shabbos? He thought today was Friday. So there was a complexity. If he forgot that it was Friday, then this law. If he forgot that this was prohibited, then it's that law. It goes around. What happens if you forgot both? That was Rava's question. But the Boimini Rav Meir Nachman, he asked Rav Nachman, Helam Zev Mahu. if he forgets both. Helem means a forgetting this and this. He forgot both. What's going to be the halacha? Tifshed, we should answer that you only chayav one. Even though there were multiple forgettings over there, you forgot that you can't plow, you can't sow this. But over here, we're learning that mehena shiachas, that you're forgetting the main concept. You only have to bring one chatas. You only have to bring right by the Avodah Zarah. Now we have an answer to Rabba's question based on with the law that we're learning from this. So the Gemara says, "Holy kasha, that's not a problem." Which you try to tell me that you can't learn from this because that would answer a question that Rav asked Rav Nachman. The Tifshed, answer the question. Big deal. So we have an answer. Okay. Holding right here is that maybe we have another source to reject Reb Zakkai, because we have a source of dividing up the malachas of Avodah Zarah, the worships of Avodah Zarah. So it says, come 1 second. How could you say that pasuk achas mehina is referring to Avodah Zarah? When if the person that did the sin was the anointed Kohen Gadol, then he brings a par. The Nasi, if it was a king, then it's a sar, brings the goat. The Yachid, if it's a regular common person that did the sin, then it's a kiss for the sira, then it's a female sheep or a female goat. But by Avodah Zarah it says to explain what the Gemara is doing here. Is the Gemara is telling me that pasuk of Achas Mehena is said very specifically by a regular carbon chatas, not by Avodah Zarah. What the Gemara attempted to do here was say that carbon chatas that is talking about over there would also teach me the laws of Avodah Zarah. Gemara steps in and says, 1 second, the laws of Avodah Zarah have very unique laws. When someone, even if he's bringing a chatas, but it's unique to the other types of chatas. If it's a regular sin, then there's different categories of who committed the sin. When it comes to Avodah Zarah, there are no separate categories. It's all the same. It's always a seira, a female goat. And so therefore, that section of the Torah that's referring to the regular chatas is not referring to the laws of Avodah Zarah. So therefore, we don't have a source for that, for dividing up the laws of Avodah Zarah into separate categories from Achas Mehena. But what this takes me back to is that back to Rabbi Yosef's question would still be a strong question. Rabbi Yosef says, how do you know that Rabbi Yosef would say that many malachas, many types of worship of Avodah Zarah would all incur one punishment, like Rabbi Zakkai says, because that's what he says about Shabbos. That's because on Shabbos he has a special law of Achas Mehena. He doesn't have those laws by Avodah Zarah. Maybe by Avodah Zarah he would agree that it would be dividing it up, and he's not a support for Rabbi Zakkai. Midi. So we leave it like at this. We don't have an answer for Rababa that had a support. We leave it at Rabbi Yosef's question. Okay. Kiyaser Reb Shmuel Bar Yehuda Amar. When Reb Shmuel Bar Yehuda came, I guess he was a traveler also. And Tana Hachi Amar Hachi Tana Kamei. We turn to the top of some place in page 62b. It says this is really what Reb Zakkai said in front of Rabbi Yochanan. It's not what you thought. Different. There was a different statement there. And nevertheless, Rabbi Yochanan is going to reject it and say this outside. But it's really a different source. It's a different statement that Reb Zakkai was teaching. What Reb Zakkai taught was the following. Chaymer b'Shabbos mishar mitzvahs. He says Shabbos is more strict than other prohibitions or other commandments. Chaymer b'shar mitzvahs min b'Shabbos. Then he says, on the other hand, there are certain aspects where other commandments are more strict than Shabbos. Let's take a look at what those strictnesses are in each category. It goes on. It says, Chaymer b'Shabbos, the strictness of Shabbos is Shabbos. When it comes to the laws of Shabbos, Asher Shtayim Be'elam Echad, that if a person does 2 malachas, and it's in one forgetting, he forgets that these are prohibited, So chayav al kol achas v'achas, he has to bring a sacrifice for each and every one. Mashenkin b'shar mitzvahs. However, with other mitzvahs, if it's one forgetting, he does different prohibitions, he's only going to have to bring one sacrifice. No, it's the same level, same level. And now to figure out what that's referring to is very complicated, and the Gemara is going to go through and reject it, and we'll see. Okay, let's see what. Anyway, Rabbi Yechanan's gonna throw this outside, but that's not a reason not to try to understand what it's talking about. Let's see. Chaymer b'shar mitzvahs, the strictness of shar mitzvahs of other commandments. B'shar mitzvahs shagag b'lei miskaven. Someone does it by mistake, without intention. Chayev, he's going to be obligated. Mashenkin b'Shabbos, but if he does that on Shabbos, he's not going to be obligated. Okay. Amar Mar. Let's go analyze. Whatever the case is, Rabbi Yochanan tosses this out. Says, go teach this outside. Let's go back and analyze, what did Reb Zakkai mean? What was he referring to? What was the case?
Women leave it. I need it. Square away.
That what's it called?
It's a chocolate covered one.
But it's not Israeli. Okay. Amar Ma, we're discussing the chocolates here on the table. Amar Ma, master taught. Going back to what the statements from Reb Zakkai. Chaymer b'Shabbos. It's interesting because usually an Amayra makes a statement. We say Gufa, not Amar Mar. Yeah. The problem, it happens sometimes, but anyway, that's what we're doing. Oh, maybe because he said it as a he said it as a brisa. Maybe that's what it means. It wasn't his own statement. He was quoting a brisa. That makes sense. It says Tani Reb Zakkai. Reb Zakkai taught it as he's quoting an earlier source. That's why it's a Amar Mar. Okay, so Amar Mar Chaymer b'Shabbos. There's a stringency about Shabbos. Why? That stringency is Shabbos Asashtayim. That on Shabbos he does two prohibitions. He's going to have to bring two sacrifices. However, other prohibitions, it's only going to be one. What are we talking about? He harvested grain and then he ground it. What would that? And so he has to bring two sacrifices. And let's compare that over to other prohibitions. What would that be? He ate forbidden fats and he drank the blood. Two prohibitions. The Gemara says, 1 second. You have to bring two sacrifices for the Shabbos laws. You have to bring two sacrifices for the forbidden fat and for the blood. There's no difference. You're trying to tell me Shabbos is stricter. It's really the same thing. So what example do you have where there's going to be a leniency by other things that aren't Shabbos? It says, it must have been that he ate chaylev twice. Only going to have to bring one sacrifice because it was all one forgetting. It says, well, let's compare that to Shabbos. And on Shabbos, we're going to need a scenario where you're going to have to bring two, right? The Kavasei Gabi Shabbos, David Ktsir, you harvested twice. The Gemara says, 1 second. It's all one forgetting. You only have to bring one sacrifice for each. If someone eats chaylev, and then he eats more chaylev, but it was all the same forgetting, even though each one was a kazayas, he's only going to have to bring one sacrifice. Same thing as when he harvests. When he harvests grain, he doesn't have to bring a chatas for every single stalk that he cut. He has to bring a chatas from everything that all the harvesting he did until he remembered that it was Shabbos, until he remembered that it was prohibited. That's all goes under one category, one malacha.
When you say like one scenario, is it like one meal or like multiple meals?
Doesn't matter. So all one forgetting. If it's all.
But what is considered a forgetting? If
he doesn't remember that this is prohibited.
At present, doesn't matter what happens. Like as long as he doesn't remember.
But yeah, it's all considered, right? So the Gemara says, you see, you have a problem. Okay, so you can't figure this out. So that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan said, okay, so go teach this outside. It doesn't make sense. Gemara says, "My kushya, 1 second. What was the problem? We can resolve this. We have a solution. Dilma loyla, may malach, really, we could say, David Ktsira Tchina, that what he did was he harvested on Shabbos and then he ground the grain into flour, right? Mashenkim b'shar mitzvahs. How would that compare to other mitzvahs where it's only going to be one prohibition, one punishment? Asan lavedis kechavim kiderabami. This is referring to other mitzvahs. It's not referring to forbidden fat and blood. It's referring to avodah zara, like Rabami taught. Now we had this quoted from Reb Zakkai and Rabbi Yechanan rejected it. However, there is another source from Rabami coming up on the next page. We'll learn Bez Hashem this evening that that says that if someone sacrifices or burns incense or pours libations all to an idol and one forgetting that this is that all these are prohibited, so then he only has to bring one sacrifice, and he learns it from a verse. The verse says, "Leisa of them shall not serve them," and that one verse combines them all of these into one. So look at what we have. Look at how we can explain this. So what we'll do is like this. We'll say that if someone does a bunch of malachas on Shabbos, he's chayav for each and every one. Someone does a bunch of services that worship idols, someone does a bunch of malachas on Shabbos, is going to be chayav for each and every one. Someone does a bunch of worships of an idol, different types of services, it's only going to be chayav one. That would be that first part of the statement of Reb Zakkai, and it works. The Gemara says, he said it's impossible to do this. The Ktani Seifa, because you have to read the end of it. And if it doesn't fit with the end, then you messed up the whole thing. What's the end? It says, b'shar mitzvahs. There's a stringency of other commandments, which now we know is referring to avodah zara, right? B'shar mitzvahs, shagig b'lei miskaven is chayiv. By other commandments, if it's a shagig, it's going to be chayiv. Shagig b'lei miskaven. Okay, so if it's a shagig, it's going to be chayiv. If it's unintentional, he's going to be obligated. Now the Gemara says, 1 second. What's your case where you say that it was unintentional by idolatry? You have to find the case, right? Are we talking about that it was a shul? He bowed down. Even if there was an idol somewhere in there, but his heart was for his intention was for heaven. He didn't bow down to the idol. And it was this H&MS video or something.
You always bring riots from H&MS.
It was about Avram broke all the idols in Terach's thing, but one of them got away. And it was left somewhere. And it was the title of the video was "The One That Got Away" or something. And it was hidden in the shul, and I don't remember exactly the details, but anyway. So
it remains idle.
He was the one that destroyed all the other ones.
So in the Mendy and the Golem, they spelled another raya. They spelled idol, not IDOL, but IDLE.
Yeah,
idol worship.
That's what I'm saying. They were idle, remained idle.
Right. So okay, so already that can't be the case because that's not even considered a sin. Yeah, you're not going to bring a sacrifice for that. Ella de Chazan Darta V'Sagale must have seen an actual statue when he bowed down. If he accepted as a god, then that's not a shagig. That's a regular idol worship. Be like but if he didn't accept it, then like then that's nothing. So what's happening? It must mean that he accepted it as a god, but not because he really he was accepting it not because he really believed in it, but he was accepting it because his someone that he loved or someone that he feared was forcing him to do this. Well, Abaya says that's chayiv, then okay, so fine. We'll have a case over here where a shogeg he didn't realize that would be a prohibition. He was doing it because someone was forcing him, so he's going to be chayiv.
What if sometimes I come in people's houses, sometimes Jews, usually non-affiliated Jews, and they have a Buddha, as a decoration. Not because, they don't pray the Buddha did this or
Right,
that. They
right.
just think,
It's just
oh, it's
decorative.
decorative. So
Right.
are they over another now? They're
don't know.
teenage nisbos, we're not good. So do they have any sort of Avera, so to say? Well, if they're teenage nisbos, you wouldn't have anything. But you know, because I'm caught sometimes, like some of them I've said, you know, but that's really an idol, you shouldn't have it. And others, I wouldn't even go there. Because I would offend them.
I don't know what it is. I don't know.
My son,
And my dog will knock it over and break it, right?
of course, when my son was 4 years old, he went to an occupational therapist, and she had one of those statues, and he
Yeah.
asked her, "Are you an idol worshiper?"
Oh, wow.
Smart kid.
That's funny.
What'd she answer?
They get a mitzvah note the next day. It says, "Dear Rebbe, my son did not bow down to idols last night."
There's this thing about like bamboo trees and Asians coming.
Yeah, I don't think that's an idol. No, it's like charms. That's an idol. I don't think they're worshiping like that's.
That's like crystals.
Yeah. Phil is asking about those bamboo trees. They have these like midget bamboo trees. You know, they put them in rocks and glass.
That's what they tell the going, like, look, you buy this and it will bring you a lot of
Right.
money. I don't know if it's just a
Wasn't there a Dollar Tree? There's like a little bush that was called
You
a Dollar
remember
Tree.
those? Yeah, you know what it was?
What was
It was just, like a fake tree, and they would make like bows of dollar bills.
No,
tie 'em on.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about an actual tree, an actual plant.
Yeah.
They call it a Dollar Tree.
I know. I just remember if you ordered a Dollar Tree, they sent a tree with dollar bills on it.
Wow.
You can't buy the dollar.
Oh, the store, the Dollar Tree. He says it's idolatry. Okay. Okay. So Hanichal Abaya can get a prohibition out of this. El Rava, but according to Rava, that says that there's not a prohibition if he's just doing it because out of love and fear, then he's going to be pater. Ma'ikal Meimar. So what over here? How over here is this going to be of one sacrifice? Elabaimer mutter must mean that he thinks that idolatry is entirely permissible. Mashenkim b'Shabbos, but on Shabbos, the pater legamri is going to be entirely exempt. So now, 1 second. What happens actually on Shabbos if he thinks that it's mutter? What the statement of Reb Zakkai would be that other mitzvahs you're going to be chayiv, and on Shabbos you're going to be pater. Mashenkim b'Shabbos, you're going to be pater. Now you're not really pater on Shabbos. The Gemara says, "Ad kan boy minei Rava mirav Nachman helam zeh." With Rava's question to Rav Nachman, if you forget that it's Shabbos, and you also forget that these prohibitions these activities are prohibited. His question was, how many sacrifices? It wasn't a question if you have to bring a sacrifice. It was a question of how many. Do you have to bring just one, or do you have to bring multiple because there were multiple forgettings of each of these halachas? But Pata Legamri, but no one says Pata Legamri. The Gemara says, "My kushya, really, I could say to you, Reisha b'avedis kecham b'sefer b'shar mitzvahs." We'll say that we'll divide up the case of Reb Zakkai. The only way to understand the first part of Reb Zakkai's statement was that there's a difference between multiple sins or multiple sacrifices or not. That would be Shabbos is multiple. But the other mitzvahs is referring to Avodah Zarah, which is a singular one. It goes according to Rabami. Then we go to the second part of Reb Zakkai, that if it's Shar mitzvahs, then you bring one sacrifice. If it's Shabbos, you don't bring any. That's what is the other mitzvahs over there, not Avodah Zarah. That's going to be a different case of other mitzvahs. The Sefer B'Shar mitzvahs. The end case will be other mitzvahs. What was the example of a shaygig b'lei miskaven? It's like more than a shaygig. It's totally unintentional here. The kasavar, because he thought reiku ubaloi. He thought that it was just saliva and he swallowed it. Turns out that was in his mouth, or what he was eating was really forbidden fats, was really chaylev. Mashenka b'Shabbos to pater. But on Shabbos, if you don't even realize that you see here, he doesn't even realize that he's eating. It's not that he didn't realize that what he was eating is. He thought it wasn't even food. He thought it was just spit. Turns out that it was forbidden fat. Okay, so that's going to be one malach. It's a eina miskaven. He didn't realize that he's eating. Now we have a rule that anything that the body benefits from, that has enjoyment, even if there's no intention, but because the body enjoys it, still considered a prohibition. However, on Shabbos, you're not going to have this. What's going to be the pater on Shabbos? The pater sheniskaven like biasatalash v'chatachas pater. If someone is intending to pick something off the ground, he thinks it's detached from the ground, and as he's lifting it up, he ends up detaching it. That was a total eina miskaven. That wasn't even what he was intending to do. He wasn't intending to do the malacha. You see, a shoygig is when you intend to do the malacha, but you didn't realize that it was Shabbos, you didn't realize that it was prohibited. Over here, you didn't even intend to cut it. Right? So he's going to be entirely pater, and this fits perfectly. Fits perfectly. So we have a teretz. Why did Rabbi Yochanan throw this out? This fits perfectly the Reb Zakkai's statement. My answer is Rabbi Yochanan follows his own reasoning that he doesn't like to do this. He doesn't like to make separate cases out of one Mishnah, or to make separate opinions out of one Mishnah. Follows his reasoning. He didn't want to do this in a Gemara in Bab Metzia. He refused to do this. He says, over there's a complexity in one Mishnah about someone using a barrel that was deposited by him, and he moved it for his own purpose, and then he puts it back. And there's a difference between if there was a designated place or not. Is he considered that it was returned to its owner, and the owner has no knowledge of any of this? So he took it and then he put it back. So in order for that Mishnah to work, we had to say that one part of the Mishnah was Rabbi Shmuel, the other part of the Mishnah was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yochanan didn't accept that. He said, whoever will explain the entire Mishnah according to one opinion, either Rabbi Shmuel or Rabbi Akiva, I'll carry his clothing to the bathhouse. It means like I'll serve him. So Rabbi Yochanan doesn't like to have two different explanations for one teaching. That's why he told Reb Zakkai to take it out. Okay. This is what Shem will learn tonight.
That's what it's usually followed. We're not allowed to cherry pick that.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Have a good day. Good day. You're welcome.